Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is round 2 of the US Chess Championships. Not a lot to speak about in the open section, so we will be covering the women's section today as well, which I think is just far more interesting at certain times. A lot more results happening, particularly in the second round. But I am going to show you this game between Sam Seviand and Abhimanyu Mishra. Why? Because it had one of the craziest finales I've ever seen. We have d4, knight to f6, c4, e6. A reminder, I think Abhimanyu Mishra is on like a 56-game unbeaten run. He plays knight to f3 to avoid the Nimsa Indian, d5, and now goes for effectively like a Catalan type system. We get the pieces kind of exchanging, not covering this too much because it is relatively well-known theory. Your queen drops back, and you just build in the center, and black pushes all of this. They're not worried about this bishop because when it opens, there will be no targets. You've just got to be careful. You can't push this just yet because knight to e5 is devastating. This knight will probably get kicked out eventually and will just jump back to the center. So we have queen e2 and now knight to a5. Brilliant move. Why? Because you step out of this and you're defending this. So it's the only real move. You can see the players haven't spent too much time. Knight to e5 now, jumping into the center. But now we simply drop back with knight to d5. And we get this trade. And it looks like you win a pawn. But I get bishop to h3. And now look at that. Chef's kiss. Why? You sacrifice the rook. But you're targeting there. Bishop takes. And then the best move is king to h8. And rook takes f1. And you get this position. And this position is about level. Somehow, it looks completely winning for white, but this pin is slightly annoying. This sacrifice doesn't work quite yet. That's still an option, but that needs to be defended. So queen to f3. All of this happens, by the way. Rook takes f1 on the board. Knight to c6 dropping back. Why? Because you're trying to undermine the defense of this bishop as much as you can. Queen to h5, now threatening a whole lot of stuff. But knight takes e5 is the best move. We get takes, and now a3. Just a good move, because you're either threatening if they take, you take, and you activate your rook. If they push, you take, and then you're going to have this pass pawn. So a really, really good move, really clutch find. We get takes, queen e7 first, to put pressure on multiple things at the same time. You defend your bishop, but then now c6, a4, rook takes a4, and now rook to d1. This game is on a knife's edge. Might not seem like it, but it really is. Look at the time. Firstly, they've had to think through this because this has been very, very tactical. Every move hanging on a knife's edge, but it's still level. The black king is hanging on, but if you can get some trades, you have got this kind of imbalance where you've got rook for bishop. Black is up one point of material, but white's queen side is about to fall apart, and then you're going to have 3 passed pawns to deal with. And this is still relatively well blockaded. So we get c3. There's only one move here that still holds, and that's rook takes a2. You might say, wait, but hang on. Doesn't this allow, the like rook coming in? Not quite, because you've got queen f6. Oops. And then you're just bust. So you can't play that just yet. c3 is no good because now your rook never got to the second rank, and you can play rook to d7. That was the whole idea. Now, there is no queen f6 with tempo on f2. That's the whole idea. So now we get c2, threatening to promote. Rook takes e7, queen, king g2, and rook takes here. But white's completely winning because I can just play. The best move here is to play rook takes b7. That is the better move because you're eliminating one of the passed pawns. Your rook then does have some control. It still monitors the second rank. The idea to go here and here is not bad, but taking on b7 would have been better because now queen takes e3. Obviously, you can't take because of the pin. And now you can see the only winning move is queen to f5. The only move actually, so queen to f5 is winning. The only other move that doesn't lose on the spot is queen to f3. Queen to f5 is found. Everything else was basically bad. Rook e2. Now You can't push because you've got all sorts of problems. But this black king is not comfortable. I hope you realize this. He cannot move. And you can't really give luft either at this current time. Rook takes b7 is now played. h6. No good. One move is winning. Everything else is a draw. At best, you must play h4. Why? Because let's say h4, c5 is the best move according to the engine. And now we have rook d7, c4, and now h5. You are sealing in the king, and you will threaten various things, and this pawn is just too slow. Instead of that, after h6, rook c7 was played, but that loses to the queen trade. You know, I'm not going to be too critical of Sam Zevin here, because he's much better than I am. Why wouldn't you just trade queens? I know it's the best move and it's easy to see. Why wouldn't you trade queens? Even if you lose this. Like, you won't lose this endgame, because you just, like, play g5, your king comes in, and you won't lose this. At best, it's a draw. You might even be able to play for a win. I don't understand why the queen trade doesn't get played. Queen to a3 is defending the rook, and just getting out of the way of queen trades, I suppose. Now, h4, rook e1 is found, so black threatening lots of counterplay, but I just take the pawn. It's not fast enough. Yes, you can pin, but I can play queen d5, rook d8, and now queen f3. Important. Rook f8, and now we can drop. We don't want to trade queens, we trade rooks, and we get here. And now it's tense, and now h5. But the advantage is all gone. It's now all a draw. So now how will they find the draw? They're kind of shuffling about. Shuffling, and the end to this game is unbelievable, right? I want you to see the end of this game. It's actually unbelievable. So we get the most awesome badass king march ever. The king now coming up to g4. The queen shuffling and getting closer all the time. Check, check. It just seems like you cannot break through until eventually you must find the way to do it. And we do find the way. We do find the way. Here. Sacrifice the rook. Not going to shout it. You can see on the board there's only one move, but do you understand the idea of queen to d2? It's the only reason you're not losing, because I will remind you, you're down a pawn and a bishop at this point. What Sam Zevin finds and sees here is unbelievable. He finds queen to d2, which is not the most, shocking move. But there's king to h3, and now queen to g2. Check. King h4 takes, and you must take the queen, and it's stalemate. The king cannot move. Just reflect on that for a moment. What a find from Samuel Zevin. I'm going to close that down so that I can go into the next game. And we'll be going into the women's section. A lot of interesting results. So just quickly, from round one, there were three decisive results. What? Three or four? Why can I only see this many boards? 12 players. Okay. There were three decisive results. Anna Sargsyan defeat Rose Atwell, Irina Krush defeat Alice Lee, and Atusa, related to Hikaru, his wife, defeat Carissa Yip. So, lots of results, even more results in round two. Very, very interesting games, definitely, but I'm going to show you what I consider one of the bigger shocks and one of the games that was just so unbelievable. It is Alice Lee versus Jennifer Yu. Jennifer Yu, a former US Women's Champion. She obviously had a draw in the first round. She's got black now in this round. We get d4, and we get this kind of, yes, a Catalan, but not quite a Catalan. Like a Neo-Catalan, now it's c4. Now it is completed the closed Catalan. We get a5, the knight jumping into the center, and it's very closed. It's very closed. We grab the pawn back like this, maneuver our knights basically to the edge of the board. But this game just pops off from almost out of nowhere. So we get knight takes e5, which is a mistake. White actually built up quite a nice advantage. You might say it's only 0.6, right? The best move in this position is to play bishop to b2. To just open up on this diagonal. That's your last piece that you need to develop. Knight takes e5 looks nice, but it doesn't actually work because this was the idea. Queen takes c5 and now bishop to b2. But I can just play, queen e6 is fine. And you don't actually gain as much advantage as you would like. So, we've got all the way here. White's got a very nice position. Black's pieces are without targets. This black bishop is not really got much to do. The rook is blocked in by its own knight. The best piece is this knight. But it can't really jump forward to anywhere. It's just well placed. Black's pieces are just sitting about. White's pieces, yes, you could argue this pawn is blocking everything. They've got tangible targets. And the knight will get into the game in just a moment. In fact, it gets in right away. Knight to c5. Queen to g6. And now look at that. Beautiful move. Why? Because you have to take it. You have to play f takes e5 and allow knight takes e6. And queen takes e6 would then be followed up with bishop takes d5. Discovery, so you must play queen takes d5. And then probably rook takes e7. Wins probably best on the spot. Not quite winning as of yet because you've still got rook d7. And everything just kind of holds together for black, but it's really tough. Instead of that, Jennifer Yu plays f5, which looks so natural because, yes, you leave this there, but it's blockaded. You get this out the way so there's no captures or anything like that, and you're kicking out the bishop. Looks nice. Bishop to g2. f4. Now you can start your own attack. No. Knight d7. You might say, what's the threat? It's coming. It's coming. f3 looks really good. Because the bishop has to go back. We first kick out the queen, and then look at that. We hit the queen again. Now you have to defend. Rook takes d5. She sacrifices the rook. I didn't say that nicely. Just a rook sacrifice out of nowhere because it works. You might say, what do you mean it works? Takes here, right? Queen f5. Sacrificing the bishop. Threatening all of this. And threatening various checkmating threats. You might say, wait, hang on. I don't understand. What is the threat? What is the threat? Rook takes d7. Takes. Jennifer Yu resigns. You just cannot stop everything. Your bishop is going to fall. This bishop will fall. I will threaten mates all over the place. And your rook will fall as well. Because I've got this with a fork of just everything you exist. And I've got this as well that threatens mates. And I also borderline trap your queen at some points. Just this position. G5 looks fine, right? You defend your queen because you can't really go anywhere else. We've got a hanging bishop. Most of us would probably play bishop to f1 or bishop to h3, right? But that will lose defensiveness because you would capture or the queen would just be able to take. Rook takes d5. Important because that knight, now the pawn comes over there, that knight can't defend or attack any of the important squares that it was going to. And you open the path for queen to f5, sacrificing this bishop completely. And you don't even take it. Why? Because if you take here, queen e5 wins on the spot. It's mate in 4. Because you cannot prevent both threats. If you play, let's say for example, queen to h6, queen h8 mate. So you would have to block, and queen takes f6, and now let's say d4, bishop takes d4, and now queen d1. Your final way to stop it, rook takes d1, and now these are both mate. King can't escape, actually, because the knight is covering that square, and the pawn is covering that square. King can't escape. Queen f5, which was followed or preceded by rook to d5. Unbelievable. Unbelievable game. And there was a lot to talk about in the women's section. I'm going to have to close this. I'm sorry, chess.com does that weird thing where when you switch between games, it jumps right to the end. So I'm just going to show you one final game. We're going to have 3 games today. There were a lot more decisive results, but I just thought I'd pick some of the best ones, or some of the ones that stood out to me. So we have Anna Sargsyan versus Irina Krush. Obviously, Irina Krush, one of the top players in America in terms of the females. Anna Sargsyan, and I've never seen her play this event before. I've been following her for a couple of years. She may have. She wins her first round, and now she's going up against one of the best players in the section. And this is an interesting clash because, I mean, you've got an IM versus a full-blown GM, which is always interesting. How is the GM going to defeat? Can the IM put pressure? So we get a little bit of back and forth in terms of some early theory that we get. A really obscure opening, it was a Queen's Gambit declined. You get this interesting structure, which is always, I say interesting. Like, why would you open the bishop like this? You would surely want this pawn backwards, right? You've also given up your light squared bishop, so you've given black both bishops. But they've had to play this, so that bishop can be targeted. The knight's under pressure, and you've always got the lingering threat of d5. You can build up the queen side. You've still got one bishop, but you're going to try and keep the position relatively locked. So knight jumps in, and now the best move here you can see on board is queen to b5. Check. And the reason is queen to b5 check. Let's say we get bishop to c6. Now you can play queen e2. So you can force the bishop back. And then when you kick out the knight, black either has to waste the tempo going back, or when you kick out the knight, it's got to jump into d5 or go all the way to a6, which is not possible. So it's got to jump into d5, and that's just going to benefit you. Instead of that, we get knight to b5, which looks logical. You're kind of putting a threat there that obviously can't easily be defended. But c6, and now we jump in, we give check, and we force this exchange. But then a5 comes, it supports the knight, and allows knight to a6 when you get kicked out. So what we just do at the moment is we play short castles, and look at that, right? Short castles into a skewer. Just by the way, short castles into a skewer. But I've got bishop to g. Best move here is to kick out the knight. Because it's got really nowhere to go. If it goes back to a6, now you've got... what wins here? Queen takes c6. Wins. That's the thing. Black never castled. So even though white castles and loses the rook... Why does the board not refresh? Oh, come on. Even though white castles and loses a rook... yes, bishop to g5, a slight miss, and you grab back here. Anna Sargsyan could have played that better. We showed the line. Instead, she went with they both play a couple of misses. But the initiative probably still sits with black. The initiative sits with black. They're up in exchange. But white still has lingering play, as you can grab here. White's going to invest in this pawn, which they forced black to give them a few moves earlier in the game. Black is going to invest in this. The question is who's going to be faster and what is going to be more lethal. So we push it all the way to d7, rook to d7, and now rook to a1, defending. We push, and this bishop is actually a beast. As we take here, we win the pawn and we remove this defender. So you can give the exchange back. We take here and here. Just look at this position, right? Who would you favor? Me, I'm taking black. That's hanging. Knight's hanging. I can probably kick this queen out at some point, but don't hang it to this bishop, which I told you is a beast. I've got this, and I'm not worried about this. So I would probably favor black. I think the king is also safer. But it is so difficult. Because you've got like knight f8 check, king to h6, the only move. Queen drops back to c1 check, and now you're forced to play g5. And we get the exchange back. Now you've got this position. as black with 2 minutes 54 seconds versus 17 minutes. Move 34. I think they get more time on move 40. They might. I don't think so, actually. How do you even begin to evaluate this position? So this is a pass pawn. This is also a pass pawn. Which one is stronger? Probably the black one, because this knight is doing a great job at just blockading this, and it can't be removed by the bishop. However, the black king is a lot weaker. So we get h4, a4, takes, and now queen to c5. Just getting eyes on everybody. And also potentially threatening a queen trade, which would be very beneficial. Actually, probably for black. So we get here, check. And now king goes the wrong way. The best move, stupidly enough, is to keep running forward. And to come here, because you might actually end up walking the white king into a mate. And you're walking away from checks. I have a queen to f8, king to g6, which is very natural, but now queen to g4. You've got eyes on the knight, and where does the king go? King goes back, but now look at this. Rook a3, rook lift, and g4 is not good enough. f4 is a slight miss, but eventually Anna Sargsyan, after a terrible rook blunder, gets this position, which is just mate in 3. And she defeats Arena Crush. Sorry, that last game was not a great piece of analysis, but I just thought it was a very interesting, very shocking result, kind of. Particularly from a player I haven't heard much about, in all honesty. But yeah, interesting day in terms of both sections. So I will remind you, there were 2 decisive results in the open section. And that was, of course, 2 players we don't cover a lot. Sam Shankland defeat Dwara Shorts, and Wesley So defeat Ray Robson. So it's a 4-way tie at the top. Yeah. From Fabiano Caruana, Wesley So, Levana Runyan, and Sam Shankland. There are 4 players tied at the bottom, that being Ray Robson, Dwara Shorts, Gregory Oparin, and Andy Woodward. And then you've got your middle group of 4, which is Sam Sevian, Owana Liang, Hans Thiemann, and Abhimanyu Mishra, who found a beautiful, or it got played against him rather, a beautiful stalemate. In terms of the women's section, of course, there were some interesting results today. So Rose Atwell defeated Talia Cervantes. Alice Lee defeated Jennifer Yu, which I showed you. Nazí Paikidze, I can't pronounce her name, I'm so sorry. Nazí defeated Atusa, so Atusa winning and then losing. And of course, Anna Sargsyan defeating Arena Crush. So we've got Anna Sargsyan. I'm so sorry. She stands at the top of the leaderboard by half a point ahead of Nazí, and then you've got Atusa, Irina, Anna, Tatev, Alice, Rose, and Megan all on 1 point, and then half points for Carissa Yip, Jennifer Yu, and Talia Cervantes, who I probably would have picked as the 3 top players for this tournament. So very, very interesting results there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment if you didn't. I understand if you didn't. And we'll try and improve for round 3. But round 3 going to be hopefully quite interesting, and hopefully I'll be able to record it much closer to when it finishes. Cheers.